Did you know that roughly 4,000 years ago, there was a vast canopy of water suspended high up in space, which completely surrounded the planet? The purpose of this water canopy was to block direct sunlight, moonlight, and starlight. Well, at least that was the case according to Jehovah's Witnesses. That's the topic for discussion on this week's episode of the Jexit podcast. Hello and welcome to the Jexit podcast. I'm your host Riley, a former Jehovah's Witness who left the religion in 2019. So, the water canopy. I guess I should tell you how I got the idea for this week's episode. So last night I met a fellow ex-JW for the first time and we introduced ourselves to each other and we were talking about how we woke up and realized that the Jehovah's Witnesses were not the one true religion. And he mentioned that what helped him to come to that realization was seeing the scientific inaccuracies in the Bible. And one such example of this is the idea that there was once a global flood. Not only is there no scientific evidence to support the idea that such a cataclysm ever took place, but also there just isn't enough water in our entire ecosystem to cover the whole surface of the earth. So this conversation reminded me of this water canopy teaching. Now, this is something that some in the ex-JW community refer to as a ghost teaching, meaning something that the religion used to teach but no longer does. However, they've never officially taken it back. They've just stopped talking about it and allowed it to fade into obscurity, essentially ghosting the teaching, hence the term. And there are many such teachings in the religion of Jehovah's Witnesses. So depending on how much you guys like this topic, I might turn it into a series and cover a different ghost teaching in each episode. Now, while I was researching the topic for this week's episode, I had previously thought that this was a teaching that they kind of ghosted in the mid-70s. So imagine my surprise when I realized that they were teaching this nonsense as recently as 2011. Needless to say, I will be citing my sources in the episode description below. So let's get into it. Why do Jehovah's Witnesses, or at least why did Jehovah's Witnesses, believe this ridiculous idea of a water canopy? Well, it all comes down to their interpretation of Genesis chapter 1, verses 6 and 7, which says, "Then God said, let there be an expanse between the waters, and let there be a division between the waters and the waters. Then God went on to make the expanse and divided the waters beneath the expanse from the waters above the expanse. And it was so." So according to this scripture, God created the expanse, which they understand to mean Earth's atmosphere. And then there were waters below the atmosphere, which is the water on the planet. But then there were waters above the atmosphere, which they understand to be this water canopy. Surprisingly, Jehovah's Witnesses are not the only Christian religion to believe this. While researching, I came across several Christian scholars who believe this idea of the water canopy, and also at least one astronomer, a professional astronomer who's also a Christian and believes in creationism, who also lists arguments for the existence of this water canopy. Anyway, staying on topic, the Jehovah's Witnesses believe that this water canopy was actually the source of the flood waters back in Noah's day. If you're an ex-JW of similar age to myself, you'll remember the Aid book. Its official title is Aid to Bible Understanding. And this book was actually the predecessor of the Insight book, whose official title is Insight on the Scriptures, and it came in 2 volumes. Now, the A book has an entire section devoted to Noah's flood. On page 439, under the section Deluge, there's a subheading, Source of the Waters. And I'll just read the first paragraph of that subheading. And I quote, "It has been said that if all the moisture in the atmosphere was suddenly released as rain, it would not amount to even a couple of inches if spread over the Earth's surface." So from what source was this vast deluge of Noah's day? The account of creation tells how Jehovah made an expanse of atmosphere about the Earth, and this expanse formed a division between the waters below it, the oceans, and the canopy of water above it. End quote. So this is why the conversation I had last night about the flood reminded me of this ghost teaching, because this is something I was taught as a child when I was being raised as a Jehovah's Witness. I was taught that Jehovah created this canopy of water high above Earth's atmosphere, which surrounded the entire planet. And its purpose was to diffuse, I hope that's the correct scientific term, diffuse the heat and light from the sun, which would then keep the Earth at a more or less consistent temperature wherever you were on the planet. And Jehovah actually used the water from this canopy to cause the flood or global deluge of Noah's day. He collapsed the canopy onto the Earth, and it was so much water that it covered the entire planet and even the highest mountains. Now, it may have just been me, and I can't find anything official to back up what I'm about to say, but I was also taught that all of that water is still here on the Earth in the forms of the North and South poles. Yes, as ridiculous as that sounds, I was actually taught that Jehovah receded the floodwaters by freezing them at the Earth's poles, and that is why we have the North and South Pole today. So that is the teaching. And as I said earlier, this is something that Jehovah's Witnesses no longer actively teach. They've just quietly stopped speaking about it and allowed this whole concept to fade into obscurity, which is why during my many conversations online with both current and former Jehovah's Witnesses, this is something that always surprises them. At least it does surprise the ones of a younger age, because they've never in their lives heard of this. In fact, the last reference that I can find in JW publications to this water canopy was from a Watchtower in 2011. It's the March 15th edition of the Watchtower magazine. In the article, "Prove Yourself Ready," paragraph 10 says, "The water canopy or heavenly ocean bursts open and a torrential downpour pounds the ark." End quote. Incidentally, that's the first time I've seen it referred to as a heavenly ocean, but I think that description paints a very good picture of what this water canopy is supposed to be. So now that we've discussed this water canopy in detail and why Jehovah's Witnesses, at least at one point, believed in this idea, why have they stopped teaching it? Well, since their teaching hasn't officially been discarded, any answer I could give you would only be speculation. Your guess is as good as mine. But my personal opinion, and this is just a personal opinion, is that the governing body, their helpers, and the people who actually write the Watchtower articles know that such a notion is ridiculous and unscientific, because there is no way that water could exist in liquid form in the upper atmosphere, because it's just too cold. Basic science that we all learn in school is that water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius. Temperatures in the upper atmosphere can fall way below that, even to minus 100 degrees Celsius. So there's no way that water in liquid form could exist in the upper atmosphere, because it would just freeze. Also, the air in the upper atmosphere is very, very thin, meaning that air pressure is too low to hold water together in liquid form. So taking into account everything we know about our planet's atmosphere and how it works, which is an awful lot, the idea of a water canopy in the upper atmosphere surrounding the entire planet is scientifically impossible. And I believe this is the reason why the religion doesn't teach it anymore. Now, as ridiculous as this idea is of an ancient water canopy that once surrounded the earth, I think that the way this organization allows certain teachings to just fade into obscurity without officially retracting them is indicative of a larger and much more serious problem. I think it's evidence of this organization's dishonesty, and it shows the lengths that they will go to hide their history. As someone who makes XJW content and posts it online, I engage a lot with both former and current Jehovah's Witnesses. And when I speak about things that the organization has taught in the past, I get a lot of pushback from people in both of those groups. I've been accused of lying and spreading misinformation simply because people in the religion today have never heard of these things. And I'm convinced that that is by design. I've only been out of this religion for 5 years, which is a tiny amount of time compared to the 42 years that I was in it. But in those 5 years, I've learned vastly more about this quote unquote religion than I ever knew when I was a member. Its origins, its history, its structure, the way that it's run, its finances, and its past teachings are all things that are, at best, obscured from its members, and at worst, outright hidden. The lack of transparency in this organization is a huge red flag, and the fact that the leaders of this religion actively discourage the religion's members from researching it using external sources is an even bigger red flag. Any person or organization that tells you not to research them is definitely hiding something. And in the case of the Jehovah's Witness religion, one of the things they are hiding is this ridiculous water canopy teaching. I just wish that all of their secrets were as ridiculous and trivial as this one. Because believe me, most of the things they are hiding are way worse than this. So that's it for now on this subject of ghost teachings, in particular the water canopy. If you like this episode, please let me know in the comments below, and I will do more episodes on various ghost teachings in the Jehovah's Witness religion. I know this was a really short episode, but I do have a couple of interviews coming up soon, so stay tuned for those. And that is it for this week's episode of the Jexit podcast. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, share, comment, and also subscribe so that you're alerted each time a new episode is posted. Thanks again for tuning in, and have a great week.